What's up, everybody? This is John with Jump Air Innovations, bringing you some more League of Legends Worlds 2021 content. We are coming towards the end of the tournament. Unfortunately, it's a little bit sad because I love League of Legends, and we're gonna go a few months without any pro League of Legends. But of course, this tournament has been absolutely amazing, and it's been really delivering. And I think it's been a really, really enjoyable Worlds so far. And we had, of course, the semi-final today. I am doing a review of T1 versus Damwon. As I've said in previous videos, if you're new, I'm not someone who claims to be a big expert. I'm just someone who loves League of Legends pro scene, and I just like talking about it and just sharing my thoughts and opinions. So make sure you leave a comment in the section below, like whether you agree with me, whether you disagree with me, what your thoughts on the series was. Make sure to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you check out the description, you can also connect with me on my other social media platforms like Insta. So make sure you do that as well. Now, this series got super hyped before the series started. Now, I was there, gather around, the boomer is talking now, let me tell you about League of Legends back in 2016, it was getting hyped up like that great series between Rox Tigers and, of course, SKT. Rox Tigers were the defending LCK champions. However, T1, or SKT at the time, were the dynasty. They were considered to be the best team on the planet. And so it was this great rivalry coming together in this semi-final. And many people saw it as the grand final. And it went to 5 matches, and it was absolutely insane. It was the best series I had ever seen. And I never thought there'd be a series that would come even close to it. And that's why there was a lot of hype to this series, because you had a similar thing. You had Damwon, the number one seed out of the LCK, and of course T1, the great dynasty that we all know them to be. You had Showmaker versus Faker. All this great stuff, all this great hype. And what was amazing about this series is this series did deliver. It was absolutely insane. I'll have to re-watch the Rox Tigers versus SKT series. This series actually made me want to re-watch that one, because I really want to sort of see which one was a better series, because this series was absolutely insane. And I don't know which one's better, because both those series absolutely delivered. This series, yeah, you can talk about, certain players. They made little mistakes and whatnot, but overall, this was really, really high quality League of Legends. The mistakes that the players were making were very minuscule, and it took players of this caliber to punish these tiny little mistakes. Mistakes that if they were playing against anyone else in the world, they wouldn't be punished for. This is the level of gameplay we're talking about, outplaying the outplays. This was high quality League of Legends, and it's very rare to see both teams perform at such an exceptional level on a stage like Worlds. So this was clearly the best team in the world versus the second best team in the world. And I absolutely love this series. I was actually meant to go for a little bit of a trip with my partner the next day. We still ended up going, but we had to leave early. And my plan is I'll just watch maybe game 1 and game 2, and then I'll go to sleep like that, And of course, I ended up staying up till, in Australia time, it was probably about 3:30. The adrenaline was still pumping, so it did take me a little bit as well to go to sleep. Oh man, this was insane. I was so tired, but rest assured, I still did the good boyfriend thing. I still made sure I went, because, obviously that's very important as well. But this was absolute banger. What a series. What a great series. And so now I'm going to be breaking down the 5 games, because we got Silver Scrapes. Silver Scrapes. It was, oh my god, this series was brilliant. This series was brilliant. So we started off with game 1. We saw T1 pick a very conventional meta comp. You had Jace in the top lane. Very predictable by T1 to get Kana on Jace if Jace was available. Faker's Rise. We all know how great Faker's Rise is. T1 actually really prioritized Rise a lot in this series, so much so they were actually letting Showmaker get LeBlanc, which did surprise me a little bit. I did think that Showmaker might get his hands on LeBlanc. I didn't think the trade-off would be for Rise. But if you know a lot about T1, that does make a lot of sense. They do love playing Twisted Fate and Rise. They absolutely love Faker, having these champions that have utility, that can roam to the other lanes and influence them. And especially given how well Khan was playing throughout this tournament, and how well Canyon has been playing, and along with Showmaker and Beryl, they've all been playing for Khan to get ahead. It makes sense when you think about it that they would prioritize Rise in order to be able to collapse and really try and punish Khan if Khan is maybe overextending a little bit, which he has been doing this tournament. But of course, it hasn't been punished because Canyon, Showmaker, and Beryl have all been covering for him because they've been putting all their resources into him, and he's been rewarding them. So the Rise pick does make sense. And obviously, we all know how great Faker's Rise is. Gumayushi had Misfortune Duty. Carrier got Leona, which, not a surprise. If you know anything about Carrier, you know that he's a great Leona player. And of course, with all the dashes that Damwon drafted for, Poppy did make a lot of sense. And also, Poppy is seen to be a bit of a counter to things like Lee Sin. So that's basically what T1's strategy was. And T1 were really looking to sort of, have these team fights. Damwon's comp, on the other hand, was very sort of out there. It was very different. You had Lucian top, which Khan seems to like into Jace. He's done this a couple of times now, where he's picked Lucian into the Jace. He sees, I think Khan, and I'll trust Khan on this because obviously we know how great he is of a Jace player. He seems to believe that Lucian is the big counter to that Jace, and it does make sense because obviously Jace looks to get his advantages in the laning phase, and Lucian obviously is a very big lane bully, so that does take away a lot of like Jace's ability to be able to get those items to then be able to put out poke later on in the game. Canyon got his Lee Sin, which I was very surprised about. I said in a previous video, I said if Canyon gets Lee Sin, T1's trolling. And of course, Damwon, as soon as Lee Sin was available, insta pick it. Also, Damwon seemed to get everything they wanted from this series, in this match, sorry. They got Canyon on Lee Sin, they got Showmaker on LeBlanc, they got Ghost on Jhin. Those three things, like with Damwon getting that in this draft, getting those three players on those three champs, they would have been literally jumping over the moon. Like, if you know anything about Damwon, you know that Ghost could possibly be the best Jhin player that we have in the world. Like, he is so good on Jhin, and people misunderstand him saying, oh, he's a Jhin one trick. And it's not so much I think he's a Jhin one trick, as opposed to his Jhin is just that good. And so it kind of makes his other champions look not as good because he's just so good on the Jhin champion. He plays it so well, and the way Damwon likes to play the game, Jhin is just so good. Many people are talking about Jhin not possibly being meta this tournament, and we've seen a huge rise in Jhin priority, and that's basically because of Damwon and specifically Ghost. They've shown how powerful this champion still is in the meta. And Beryl pulled out the Maokai. The Maokai a counter to the Leona. And also, Damwon loves their vision game. And the saplings from Maokai allows a lot of vision as well. And a lot of easy face checking. Because obviously you can just throw a sapling in there and that's it. You don't have to physically face check. This game was T1 a lot looking for team fights, but Damwon just their comp not allowing it, and they eventually just got pick after pick after pick. And in typical Damwon fashion, they came out very strong. You find that the reason why they're very successful in best of fives, especially in recent years, is because they start very, very strong. I'm trying to think. I think the only series I can remember in the last year and a half where they have lost the first game was against RNG in that MSI final. Apart from that, they've won every first game of a best of 5. And when you do that, while it's not a guarantee you're going to win the series, it puts you in such a comfortable position because now you know this series is going to go to at least 4 games. Like you have that comfort, you're on the board, and something as simple as that mentality can really help you and free you up a lot when you're playing in these very difficult and tough and stressful situations, just making sure you're on the board. So yeah, first game went to Darwin. Darwin really strong. It was a little bit stompy towards the end of that game. It was back and forth a little bit early on, and then Darwin just seemed to really just sort of take control of the game. The Lucian was getting picked on a bit, however, it didn't really matter because Darwin just seemed to be getting so many advantages on the rest of the map. Game 2, we saw T1 then start to really experiment a lot more in their drafts. T1 is really, both these teams actually are really great at drafting. They're not afraid to play unique things. They have 2 supports as well who are willing to play pretty much anything in the bot lane. We all know Beryl for his crazy picks in the bot lane, but Carrier actually is way more of a mad scientist than Beryl is. He plays things like Echo support, Sylas support, like unironically plays these things, and he stomps. He is such an amazing support, and you know, later on in the series, we got to see a little bit of his unique champion pool. So Darwin went to a little bit more meta as well. They looked for Graves top, which we've seen Khan play a lot. Graves is considered very, very strong in the meta right now. Can play on its own, and it's very easy to be isolated by itself. And it has a lot of sustain, and also can, pretty much take care of itself. With Lee Sin being taken away, we saw Canyon go towards the Xin Zhao. Showmaker got LeBlanc again, but this time wouldn't be as successful as we saw in game 1. Bit of a pivot from draft is that we saw Ghost be on Draven. Now, I've talked a little bit about this, but if you haven't seen the video, basically Ghost is a massive Draven player. So for me, this wasn't a shock at all. If you know anything from his days back when he was on Sandbox, when they were in Challenger League, and he was the carry of that team. He was the one that propelled them to be able to get out of Challenger into the LCK. And when Sandbox first came into the LCK, they were a really, really strong team. And on the basis of that was off Ghost being a hard 1v9 carry. One of the signature picks he would always play was, in fact, Draven. He was one of the few Draven players in the LCK along with Teddy. So Ghost picking Draven here wasn't that much of a surprise for me. The only surprise I had was that they were willing to play a Draven comp in this best of 5 series when it was very highly talked about that Gumayusi was better, the best ADC possibly in the world right now. So to sort of throw down that gauntlet with the Draven was quite interesting. Beryl as well. Alistar is his signature pick on the international scene at Rift Rivals against the LPL. That's where we really first saw Beryl and really sort of, for international audiences anyway, people who possibly weren't watching the LCK, got to know a bit about Beryl and his really his powerful engaged style support play, where he flash was it flash headbutt? Maybe it was flash pulverize. I can't remember. It was basically like he flashed in, like the typical Alistar flash into the comp, and he uses all the CC, and then Darwin wins the team fight pretty easily. It was something along those lines. But yeah, that was at Rift Rivals, and that was the very first time we saw Beryl on the international scene. That was, in fact, the first time we saw Darwin on the international scene. And the 2 big takeaways from that was Beryl's engaged on Alistar there, and Nuggery really stepped up that tournament, and he made a bit of a name for himself as well. And that's where the O2 power spike really sort of took off, because yeah, he had that game where they where they killed him quite a few times on Vladimir, and then in the team fight later on, he still popped off. But anyway, the point is, I'm saying is like Ghost and Beryl did get a lot of comfort this game. T1, they went in a completely different direction. They took away the Jhin from Ghost, and I think that just highlights how strong Jhin is in this meta right now. I actually think he's stronger than Misfortune. I thought that for quite some time, but people have been really prioritizing the Misfortune over Jhin. I actually think Jhin is way more reliable than Misfortune, and we eventually see that a little bit later on. But the fact that Gumayusi was willing to play Jhin shows how strong the champion actually is. Kana picking Yasuo top was definitely something I did not expect though. Kadriel on the stream was talking about how he had seen Kana play Yasuo top in solo queue the day before or a couple of days before. So I guess he'd been practicing it. It was something they obviously were practicing. I don't know how much they practice in scrims though. But yeah, Yasuo top, something I didn't expect to see this series. Or perhaps this entire tournament. Ona going Lee Sin was huge. I think Lee Sin is really, really broken. It's definitely I think if you're not gonna play the assassin junglers, then Lee Sin to me is the strongest jungler that is in the meta right now. And Ona had a fantastic game on the Lee Sin. Keria playing Rakan. I think Jhin Rakan is a really, really strong combo. Just because you have so much reliable CC chain, like you can just perma-stun the opponents, and and Keria, we all know how good he is, and Rakan I think has risen up in priority a lot this tournament. As the tournament's gone on, people have sort of remembered that Rakan's actually a pretty good champion. Makes me wonder if people are possibly thinking about or even playing with the idea of perhaps Xayah, but Xayah just seems really weak in the meta right now, so I don't think we'll see the Lovers Duo bot in the grand final. But food for thought, like maybe that's something if all the ADCs get banned out and we start getting towards the non-meta ADCs, we might see a Xayah Rakan bot lane. But as it stands, I don't think we'll see much Xayah. Of course, I did talk about this in the preview. I said that if Showmaker first picks LeBlanc, I expect to see Lissandra come out of Faker. That's seen as the massive counter pick to LeBlanc. And we saw Faker absolutely pop off on Lissandra. Great game. It looked like Damwon just weren't allowed to play the game. And yeah, no matter how much they tried, Ghost did get a big shutdown, and you kind of thought that maybe, Damwon could possibly be able to scale off that. But it just, Rakan, Lissandra, Jhin, Lee Sin, it's just, it just seemed like, it was very hard for Draven to be able to get into these team fights. And that was pretty much the lead that Damwon had, or like pretty much the gold that Damwon had was all on Ghost, really. So the fact that in these crucial team fights, Ghost couldn't get in, meant that, it was pretty, like, these fights would become T1 favored, and T1 would level up the series, so this would be 1-1. We then got into game 3, and Khan returned to the Lucian top. Lucian top didn't have a great series, even though he won one, lost one. It wasn't necessarily, I think Lucian top didn't really seem like it was doing that much this series. But yeah, Damwon returned to the Lucian top. We saw Canyon on Jarvan. I'm not a fan of the Jarvan. I've been saying this all tournament. I just don't like the champion. I think it's very easy for the champion to be countered. And I also think the champion scales off so early that it seems like you basically become a stun bot towards the end. And, you saw the game with Damwon versus Mad. You saw how far Elyoya got ahead. And it just shows how useless the champion becomes, is that, like, as the game went on, it just didn't matter that he he had 5 kills in the early game, and it literally did not matter at all. Yeah, you could talk about Earlia's build was a little bit troll, but the fact of the matter is, if you get 5 kills that early, like, do you think, like, you have that same sort of problem if you have, like, 5 kills on Lee Sin that early? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, yeah, I'm not a fan of the champion, and I'm not a fan of, yeah, just it either in jungle or top, actually. So I hope we don't see it in the grand final. That's just my opinion. But we saw Canyon on it. If anyone was going to make it work, it would be the best jungler we've ever seen. Showmaker getting his Syndra was huge. I thought I actually liked the Syndra Jarvan combo. I thought if you're going to have Jarvan, you need to have like something like a Syndra that makes the stun, like the combo, a lot easier for Jarvan, and I thought Syndra allowed that, especially Showmaker's Syndra, because it is one of the best Syndras on the planet. Ghost, he went towards the Misfortune, and we saw Beryl again on the Maokai. T1, they went pretty meta with the exception of their support. Kana on Kennen. This was the first Kennen we saw of the series. Kennen is seen as the strongest top laner in the meta at the moment. It's just so powerful. It has so much CC. It just has so much team fight influence. It doesn't matter how far behind it gets, it can still influence those team fights. And that seems to be very important in this meta right now. We saw Ona on the Xin Zhao. Lee Sin, of course, got banned. Both teams, I think, finally worked out that you just can't let Lee Sin through the draft. So you had Xin Zhao in the jungle for Ona. I think Xin Zhao is a lot better than Jarvan. So yeah, definitely was much. I was much more happy with Ona on Xin Zhao than I was with Canyon being on Jarvan. Faker went to his Rise again. As I said, a lot of Rise priority this series. Gumayusi again, high priority on Jhin. Just as I said, I think it's not a reflect. I don't think it's necessarily a reflection on Ghost. I know people have been saying that. Oh, it's, Ghost can't play anything except Jhin. I don't think it was necessarily that. I just think teams are starting to realize how powerful this champion actually is, and how if Lucian's off the table, or even if Lucian is on the table, it really doesn't matter. The Jhin just is so reliable, and it's so much strong. It seems like it's so much more stronger than the Misfortune. So yeah, I think it was more people prioritizing the Jhin, and we saw Carrier pull out Zillion support, and I am someone who loves Zillion support. When I play support, I always, like, if I get auto-filled into support, I like to play things that are a bit fun. So I play things like Pyke, I play things like Rakan, and I play things like Zillion. I absolutely love Zillion support, and I think it's so underrated. It actually is really good. You have stuns, you have damage, you have you have the speed up, or you have like the slow down. You have what's really underrated, which is the passive of the experience that you give to your AD carry. So your AD carry is actually always, usually, unless you've had really bad trades or you've lost 2v2 early on, your ADC will get to level 6 before theirs, which is really, really huge. And of course we all know the ultimate with the revive as well makes team fighting later on so much more easier for your team and so much more difficult for the other team. As it stood, it basically came down to the fact that Damwon's comp just couldn't get around the Zillion. The Zillion just seemed to provide so much sustain, so much utility in the team fights that no matter how much Damwon did, they just couldn't overcome the ultimate. And eventually Gumayusi got so huge. He had the 100% crit build, and the speed up as well. Like he was zooming around the rift there, and it just, Damwon had no answer to it. So then we moved to game 4. T1 were up 2-1 at this point, and they had match point, and it was, backs against the wall for Damwon, and Damwon It was backs against the wall for Damwon, and Damwon kind of went a little bit of a different direction in their draft. They got Ghost on Jin, which I thought was really important. Beryl took the Rakan. As I said, Jin Rakan I think is a really, really strong bot lane duo at the moment. Showmaker got LeBlanc, which the guts of Showmaker as well too. You know, he lost pretty badly in that second game on LeBlanc, and to like come back in this game 4 in this really important game and be like, nah, put me on LeBlanc, I will carry. You know, like it's what you want to see from your superstar, because a lot of times you see these great players, I don't want to say they hide in the big moments, but you know, they sort of, they're not present in these really, really great, in these really, really difficult situations. And so to see Showmaker step up, take the carry, take a champion like LeBlanc that is so important for your team and your team's damage, and in a comp like this, LeBlanc was really the main carry and the main damage dealer. And for Showmaker to just say, you know, like to put the whole team on his back, like how, you know, like by picking the LeBlanc, just shows the level of confidence he has as a player, and truly shows why many, myself included, consider him to be the best player on the planet. Canyon, he went for the Assassin Jungler, which, as I said, I think Assassin Junglers are the strongest in the meta right now. I just think junglers and teams themselves are very reluctant to play them. Kiana, I think, I actually like Kiana more than Talon in the jungle, and Zed, because I think Kiana provides CC, which I think is really, really better for, you know, ganking and setups and whatnot. And also, if you're fighting for things like Rift and Dragons, her ultimate, I think, is a lot more useful than Talon and, of course, Zed. But Canyon, the best jungler in the world, you know, he got a champion that he can carry on as well. And I think that was really important with this draft, is that they said, okay, Canyon and Showmaker are our 2 best players. They're possibly the 2 best players on the planet. Let's put them on champions that can carry. If we're going to lose this series, we're going to lose it through Canyon and we're going to try and get Canyon and Showmaker the resources they need to carry. And if they can beat us doing that, well, then they deserve to win. And I like that. I like when a team, you know, they put resources into their best players and they try to win through that when, you know, in these pressure situations, because, you know, I would have hated to have seen Ghost on Draven, for example, or seen like Khan on Lucian in this series, like in this match, because as much as I think they're really great players, I want, if you're Damwon, you want your best players on champions that can carry. And if T1 beat that, well, then all you can do is shake their hand and say, well played. And so I really liked the LeBlanc Kiana change up in the draft. And of course, Khan picking Gragas, didn't expect it, but it is something he has played a lot throughout his career. He does play a lot of Gragas. He has played a lot of Gragas even this year. Gragas top, not really seen much meta anymore, but again, it was something he seemed to specifically pick into Kana's Jace. And as I said, he seems to understand matchups against Jace very well. Kana got his hands on Jace. Another loss on the Jace though, which I think hurt Kana's confidence a lot, because you would expect Kana, if he gets his hands on Jace twice in a series, that he would at least be able to carry and have a really strong performance in one of those games. As it stands, he wasn't able to in either game. Owner on Jarvan 4, as I said, I'm not a fan of the pick. I didn't like that they put Owner on Jarvan 4, especially when we saw great games out of him on Lee Sin and Xin Zhao. We know how strong he is on Talon. I wasn't a fan of Jarvan 4 there. Faker's Rise, again, we got it, as I said, a lot of priority on that champion for Faker. As I said, it provides a lot of ability, especially if they felt that, you know, Damwon was going to win in side lanes. So yeah, definitely T1 really felt that they needed that ability to be able to contest side lanes, and that's why there was a Rise priority. Twisted Fate was banned the entire series because you kind of don't want either Showmaker or Faker on that champion. So yeah, it was just kind of perma-banned all series. So it makes sense there was a lot of Rise priority. I don't think Rise, though, is that strong in the meta right now that you would be first picking it as T1 did, but obviously T1 just saw it as like that sort of level of priority needed. Gumayusi and Carrier, they really, especially after their pop-off game with Jin and Zillion, they really felt like they were dominating that bot lane, and they went to take it to Darmon's bot lane by picking Lucian Lulu, which is a really strong 2v2 in that bot lane. As it stood, though, in Darmon's darkest hour, backs against the wall, Showmaker puts on one of the greatest LeBlanc games you will ever see. I think he ended up 11-0 and like 5 assists, something like that. It's absolutely masterclass by the best player in the world. And yeah, Darmon were able to fight back, and they were, even though they were facing elimination, they were able to pull off such a clutch performance in that game, and it just was a testament to how great this series was and how great these two teams were playing, which of course led us to Game 5, where both teams kind of went a little bit away from meta and kind of went to more comfort. You see this a lot in best of fives, where you get to the 5th game and it just basically, you want to sort of get that comfort because it's just such a high stakes game. Khan on Graves, very comfortable on the Graves. As I said, Graves is very strong in the meta right now. And of course, it's very self-sufficient and sustainable on its own. I was surprised to see Canyon play Talon. That was a treat. Just like how I was talking about with Showmaker, like playing LeBlanc, like the confidence to be able to pick the Talon in a game like this stressful, this important, this do or die. Canyon shows he is one of the few junglers in the world, along with Owner, that can really play these assassin junglers. And it was interesting that Darmon, kind of, as the meta in this series grew, Darmon really started to play and prioritize these assassin junglers for Canyon. And we saw that it actually worked out really well for them in that sense. Showmaker, he got his Zoe. I think it's the first Zoe he's picked all tournament, but anyone who knows anything about Showmaker knows his Zoe is the stuff of nightmares. So Showmaker, it was pretty hype. It was pretty hype. Ghost got Ziggs, and Beryl got Rakan. All these champions, their players are really, really comfortable on this. And it actually ended up being a really, really smart draft as we got on to the game. Kana, he got his Kennen, which he's very famous for. Owner got Xin Zhao, which we all know how great he is on Xin Zhao. Faker's Azir. As I said, Faker could possibly be the greatest Azir player we've ever seen. What was interesting is that Darmon left out the Aphelios. And Gumayusi was first picking it because Gumayusi is an insane Aphelios player. I did expect Darmon to allow Aphelios through at least once in this series. I thought it would have been earlier on, like not in Game 5. I thought they would have maybe let it through in Game 1 or 2 to see if they could counter the Aphelios or not. And Carrier went back to the Zillion, which was obviously really strong in Game 3. Again, the reason why Darmon let up the Aphelios is because Darmon, like a lot of people, I've heard LS talk about this, for example, they see AP bots as a counter to Aphelios. So things like Ziggs, things like Syndra, which are champions that Ghost plays, actually. He plays a lot of Ziggs. He absolutely loves Ziggs as a champion. And he has played Syndra bot in the LCK this split before. So I wasn't surprised. And I don't think it was like some attempt to make sure that Ghost got something good. I just honestly thought that maybe that Darmon kind of wanted to influence and force T1's hand in the draft, because with Aphelios open, T1 has to take it. And if you know that your team, or sorry, their team rather, is going to take Aphelios, that really then allows you to be able to draft. I don't think Aphelios is that broken that allowing him through is an automatic loss. Even though Gumayusi is so amazing on the champion. And as I said, Darmon felt really comfortable in putting Ghost on the Ziggs as a counter to the Aphelios. The Zillion brought a lot of questions that Darmon did not have any answer to in Game 3. However, they were able to, the long-range poke and the lack of having to engage in fights if they didn't want to, through the Ziggs and the Zoe, allowed them to just constantly make Keria have to use his ult in unfavorable situations, which then allowed it not to be available in team fights. So, Darmon navigated that really, really well. But this game was so intense. This game was so close. T1 Darmon were winning for the beginning bit. Then T1 came back, and T1 were able to get both Beryl and Khan, and they looked towards Baron. But then Showmaker was able to stop the Baron thanks to his Zoe play. Oh my god, this game was so intense, and it ended up coming down to a Elder. In fact, T1 got a Baron, but they kind of forced the Baron, which allowed Darmon to get an ace. However, there were too many structures up, and they were able to get all the way to the Nexus turret. They took down one of the two Nexus turrets. That's how close they got. But then Gumayusi was able to have an amazing Aphelios ult, which was able to take down Beryl and able to save, the miracle save right on the Nexus there. And it came down to an Elder fight, and of course, Canyon, the best jungler perhaps we've ever seen. I'm really going to have to look at Benji tape. And trust me, I'm someone who was a massive T1 fanboy. I absolutely loved the SKT dynasty. I always want Faker to do well. I always want SKT to do well. So trust me when I say that, I think Canyon is better than Benji. Is not me being a SKT hater or being a prisoner of the moment. This is something I think about quite a lot. And Canyon, he just seems like he can play every champion in the jungle. He has so much more versatility, and he seems like he carries a lot more than what I remember of Benji. Came down to a smite fight, and of course, Canyon was able to get that smite fight. Darmon get the Elder. They win that team fight, and then they end up winning that game, coming back from 1-2 down to win the series 3-2. This series was absolutely insane. I absolutely loved it. As I said, I was meant to get up early in the day, but, I still ended up getting up early, but I was meant to go to bed, but I didn't. I just couldn't. This series was must watch, must see. And so it was really great to see. And yeah, now EDG, they're going to have a tough ask of them to be able to try and beat Darmon, because Darmon looked really strong. This looked like the two best teams on the planet facing each other. Well, that's my review of that best of 5 series. Let me know what you think. Did you enjoy the series? Were you happy with the result? Were you sad with the result? Did I miss anything? Do you want to add anything to it? Please let me know in the comments below. But yeah, always stay safe, be kind to one another, and I'll see you next time.